This young lady is deciding to choose adventure over debt. She says, I want to enjoy my life now, not save for a future that might not ever come. So let's see what she's talking about.
I don't know. Maybe I have the wrong idea about it. Y'all keep saying that, save this, save that. The whole thing is like, I don't know. Maybe it's me. Maybe it's my personal experience. I just known too many people that didn't even make it to 30, literally. So, like,
Okay, listen. So she said a word there that I don't see talked about a lot on social media, and it's probably because the majority can't really relate. Now, I don't know this young lady personally, so I'm gonna just speak from my own experience. I can definitely understand where she's coming from when she said, I know people who didn't even make it to 30. I know people who didn't even make it to 16. Coming from where I come from and growing up in the environment that I grew up in, there were people in my family, my close friend circle, friends of the family who didn't make it to 18, 22, 26. And if they did, they didn't have their freedom, if you pick up what I'm putting down. And what that does to the person who is witnessing it and is living, it does something to you psychologically and it does something to you mentally, where especially as you move into adulthood, you move from a place of like survival to I might not be here tomorrow, so I'm gonna just live for today. What that translates into financially is you're not making decisions, healthy, favorable financial decisions based on your present and based on your future. You're more so focused on instant gratification. While that is fun and enjoyable and amazing in the moment, one thing that I would share as someone who's now in my late 30s, pushing 40, someone who was the exception to the rule when I saw people around me who, if I'm gonna just keep it a buck, are no longer here. It wasn't like they was 40s and 50s and they passed on. These are teenagers, young adults who are not making it to high school graduation, who are not making it to college graduation. So I get where she's coming from, but I would throw this out to her. What happens when you are the exception to the rule? What happens when you live? You spent 30, 40, 50 years making your financial decisions based off of a YOLO mentality. And now you're pushing 60, 70 years old and you don't have anything. You don't have anything to show for the life that you've lived. That's the only thing that I would toss out there. And I'm having a more like for real tone because it's a for real thing. And I get it. When I tell you, I get it. I actually, one of the next videos I'm going to make is about survivor's remorse. And a lot of times it's talked about from the perspective of like the famous person making it or coming out of unfavorable situations. Oftentimes they're a person of color, oftentimes they're Black. But what happens when that person makes it, the people that they grew up with don't, right? It's a personal experience of mine. When I say I get it, friend, I get it. I understand. However, what happens when you do? What happens when you live until you're 50, until you're 67, until you're 78, until you're 84, and your decisions up until this point have been made from the mentality of, oh, I didn't think I was going to live this long? Because I can tell you one thing for certain, two things for sure: Social Security ain't going to be enough if it's still around. And you're going to get to your 60s and not be wanting to work 40 hours a week, standing up or behind a computer desk. I don't know this young lady. I don't know how old she is. She looks like she's a young adult, maybe in her 20s. As someone that probably has a good 10 years on her, I am your future because you are going to live long. We're not even putting nothing else into the universe. You will live a long, prosperous, healthy, amazing, fulfilled life. What you don't want to do is get to that point and have nothing financially. Because if you get to that point and you don't have any kids or you don't have a spouse, how do you pay your bills? You don't really work or you don't want to work, right? As you get older, we don't want to work as we get older, but you haven't set yourself up financially for that. Then you find yourself working at 70, 81. That's no way to live. If you do have kids, what's happening nowadays is, particularly in our culture, if I can just keep it 100 with you, our parents who are getting older in their 60s and 70s and 80s who didn't plan for the day that they would be older, the burden then is placed on the Gen Z and the millennial generation to take care of the parents while they are trying to maintain their own financial household. I ain't gonna get too deep, but if you can't tell, I'm passionate, all right? But no, I would just say keeping it lighthearted, just something for her to consider. What happens when you do? What happens when you make it to 30? What happens when you make it to 40? What happens when you make it to 60? And all of your decisions have been based on the thought process of, oh, I didn't think I was going to live this long. Then what?
I'm not saying I shouldn't save for the future. I shouldn't have a retirement plan. I shouldn't put up for all this other great, nice. But the thing is, you need to live life now.
So I love the fact that she acknowledges that she needs those things. I don't like the fact that she's a little dismissive when it comes to having those things. She goes on, I think she's about to talk about, she says you only live once, or let's watch to see what she says. Or you have to live life now or something like that.
I'm never get this year back. So y'all can save up for a vacation that might take me 5 years to save up for. And then what happens when I get to that 5-year mark and I can no longer do it?
She's saying some things that I want to dissect, because I definitely understand where it's like you only live once, literally. Like, y'all made it into a thing, YOLO. You only get one shot at this thing called life. But here's what I would toss out to her as something to consider, is to strike a balance between living your life and making sure that your financial present and your financial future is good, right? Or as good as it possibly can be. Don't get to the point where you are sabotaging your present and or your future because you want to have this amazing, adventurous life. Because the reality of the situation is, ain't nobody got a money tree. And I say that to say all money is finite. All money is limited. So the most important thing you can do, especially in your 20s, is find that balance as much as possible between living life on the edge and the adventure and creating the memories and all the things, to making sure that you're building healthy habits financially, so that when you do get older, which you will, you haven't screwed yourself for the past 20, 30 years. That balance. It's a must. It's a must. It's a must.
Things are way more expensive, so that's just out of the question. We got some type of crazy ass bed where we can't leave the country, or I'm just not in a physical shape or mental shape to even be able to travel. I don't know. Maybe it's me. Maybe I'm irresponsible. I have no clue.
I wouldn't necessarily say she's irresponsible. What I will say is there's a couple different factors at play. The first being possibly her age. Second, maybe her personal experiences. I don't know what her personal experiences are, but if she hasn't really had to, how do I say, have like significant and severe financial setbacks or ramifications of her decisions that led to financial setbacks, she can't relate. Maybe that's not something that she can relate to. I also think her mentality when it comes to, like she said at the beginning, not really seeing people make it past 30, that will shape how you interact and handle and deal with money, right? If you feel like, oh, I might not be here tomorrow, then it don't matter if I have debt tomorrow because I ain't going to be here tomorrow to pay it. You know what I mean? Like, literally, that's how some people think. However, what happens when you are here tomorrow and the day after that and the day after that and the day after that? Meanwhile, the debt is just piling up. It becomes to the point where it's unbearable. This is hypothetical. I'm not saying this is going to be her situation, but if we just play this out, the debt becomes unbearable. So then does that mean, are you eligible to buy a house? What is your credit score looking like? Do you not have a savings? What happens when there's a medical emergency? Are you now putting that on credit? Can you afford to get a car? Do you have student loans? Do you now have to file for bankruptcy? It's like, those are some of the ramifications of having a very, I'ma just do whatever I want to do right now type of mentality, and I'll deal with it later, because later will come and you ain't gonna want to deal with it. Trust me.
I just know that if I can make a way to make sure it happen, I'm gonna make it happen.
Hold on, friend. That's culture coded. That's culture coded. When she said, if I want to make something happen, I'm gonna find a way to make it happen, or whatever she just said. What that means is, in Black speak, if I want to do something, travel, adventure, and I don't have the money for it, I don't have the cash for it, I'm going to find a way. That's what that means. I'm going to put it on credit. I'm going to ask my cousin, friend, sister, brother, mother, uncle, father to hold some money. I'm going to do whatever it takes to make sure that I can have the adventure. And that's where it becomes irresponsible. Because when the adventure is over, you got to come back to that debt and you got to find a way to pay it off. Some debt is not chargeable in bankruptcy. I know a lot of people think, oh, I'll just file bankruptcy and everything will be wiped away. Not everything. It also depends on the type of bankruptcy you file. I'll just move out of the country. You still got a social security number that's tied to the United States. Uncle Sam's still gonna want their coin. Then what?
Experiences are more important than any of this material, saving up, retirement fund.
Okay, so I do agree with her. I agree with her when she said experiences are more important than the material things. I personally definitely agree. That's the way that I live my life. I didn't always live my life like that, but I live my life like that now. I am one who values experiences. I value being able to create memories with the people that I love and the people around me over material things. I agree. However, what I don't agree with is what she started to say about savings and debt and not really paying attention to it. That part I don't agree with. I don't agree. I don't agree. I don't agree. As someone that probably got at least a decade on her in terms of age, and again, I don't know how old she is, but she looks like she maybe in her early 20s, at least a decade. At least 10 years, maybe more like 13, 14, 15, if I'm keeping it real. I am her future. What happens when you do? What happens when you make it? And financially, your life is in turmoil. Don't set yourself up for failure. I get it. I know it's easier said than done. And I'm in my 20s and I ain't really care about nothing. I ain't worried. Period. We outside. I get it. However, what happens when you got to come inside and deal with your finances? Because you can't be outside 24/7, 365. At some point, you got to come in the house. And then what?
I just don't care about that right now. I'm sorry.
I'm laughing because I appreciate her transparency. I don't care. I don't care. Period.
Saving, yeah, Andy, but like for me personally, I feel like this country is already just going to shit as is, and it's like crazy expensive to live here.
Okay, wait, listen, because this is something that we do. We do, if you catch my drift. And I want to caution people against doing this. We think that, okay, cool, the world is going to SHI, like she said. And I agree to some extent, right? When you talk about at a macro level, the government, the administration, regulation, like all of our rights are being stripped. I get it. I understand. I think sometimes we use that as an excuse to then let our own personal, at the micro level, our own personal situations and dealings when it comes to our finances also go to SHI. And we can't do that. Because then what happens is, what people don't talk about on the other side of that is when the economy bounces back, which it will, when the administration changes, which it will, everything is on the up and up. At the macro level, ain't nobody about to come get you and help you up when it comes to your finances and make sure you straight. So to take on the mentality of, oh, the world is going to HE double hockey sticks in a handbasket so I can let my own personal stuff go as well, sweetie, that has proven time and time again for us in particular not to be a good strategy. Time and time again. So if anything, while you see the craziness that is happening in the world, and the impact, because it does impact us. I'm not just saying, oh, it's happening out there and there's no direct impact. There is a direct impact, so I don't want to negate that. But what I do want to say is don't use that as an excuse to then let your finances also go to trash, because inevitably they going to make sure they bounce back. You got to make sure you straight. Not to mention, oftentimes, the bounce back for them happens within years. And it takes us, you always going to be behind the 8 ball with that strategy. You can't do that. You can't do that. Because they're going to make sure they good. You got to make sure you good.
So, like, for me, I know y'all say, oh, this, okay, you want to retire, you want to pay down your debts. I don't know.
Again, I appreciate her transparency and her candidness. I don't care. I'm not worried about it. Some of that may be age. Some of that may be personal experience. Some of that may be what she's seen in terms of, like she said earlier, people not making it to 30. All of that is shaping her decision making. So I understand, I can comprehend, but if I can just offer anything, let's talk about the other side of it, right? Let's think through when the adventure is over. Let's think through when you're 55, 56, and what that life looks like. One thing for certain, 2 things for sure, Your 30s, 40s, and 50s gonna sneak up on you faster than you know. Trust me when I tell you. I talk to my friends and I'm like, we're about to be 40. Like, when, where, why, how? Wait, I was just 21 yesterday on period. No, no, friend. No, friend. That was a decade ago. A little bit more, but don't do the math. Yeah, I get it. I sympathize and I empathize with her perspective, and I understand where she's coming from, how she laid it out. Like, I don't care. I ain't really worried about it. I'm choosing adventure over debt. I don't agree with it, but I can sympathize. I can see the humanity in what she's speaking about and how she's speaking. But as someone who is a little bit older and can relate just a tad, when we talk about seeing people around you who don't necessarily make it, you will live a prosperous life and it will be a fulfilling life. What you don't want to do is get to the point in life where the decisions that you've made in terms of your finances has really sabotaged you later in life. I know it seems far off, and I know it seems like that's not going to be your reality and whatever, you just an old geezer telling me what to do. But listen, just hear me out.